Older. Okay, next up we are doing something fun. Something fun. It is called PowerPoint Karaoke. Okay? Yes, yes. Exactly. So you know what it is. I for the one person in the audience that didn't grow up playing PowerPoint Karaoke as a child, I'll give you a brief explanation. Basically, someone has created a PowerPoint presentation. Some other person is going to come up here who has never seen it and has no idea what it is about, and will do their best to present that to you. Afterwards, the person that made it will come up and present it the way it was supposed to be presented. Let's hear it for Leigh and Aidan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aidan.
And I'm Leigh.
And we're going to be doing tonight's PowerPoint Karaoke. And it's quite an honor to get to do this tonight because I'm doing this presentation with my beautiful wife. And yes, we're very deserving of applause. And you know, it's a pleasure to do this because our marriage, you know, Leigh's background is in science, my background is in arts. So together we're the perfect marriage of art and science.
It does make for some very interesting conversations at home. For instance, Aidan, what is anaerobic digestion?
Oh geez, okay, quiz time. Anaerobic digestion is an instant in which someone is exercising while digesting. And of course I'm opposed to that because everybody knows you should wait 30 minutes. Is that right?
Okay, well, you're right. You probably should wait 30 minutes after eating before you work out. But no, anaerobic digestion is just digestion in the absence of oxygen. Aerobic is oxygen.
Okay, very good. Well, I have a question for you, Leigh.
Okay.
What is life?
See, I'm a biologist, so literally I studied life, so it's kind of an easy answer. Something is living if it interacts with its environment, it has to grow and metabolize, and it has to reproduce.
Okay. Well, you know, as every good artist knows, life is what we make of it. So.
I can never win.
And I guess with that, you know, you've gotten a sense of the perspectives that we're coming from. And we also, you know, we both had a history of working in environmental non-for-profits before we met. And Leigh, do you want to give them a sort of a quick...
Sure. So I put together all of the slides. I thought it'd be interesting for us to explore the concepts of environmentalism and what it means to be an environmentalist and hear it from both a science and an art perspective. So with that, good luck, Aidan.
Thank you, dear. I hope you didn't torture me too much. Okay, so just to reiterate, I have never seen these slides before.
Top secret.
Okay, How to Be a Good Environmentalist by Leigh Paulseth and Aidan Dahlin Nolan. Part of being a good environmentalist, obviously, is caring for the trees. I hope that this is a big part of today's presentation because I actually do know something about trees, so this is a good start. Right. Okay. So, of course, it's very important to read. In order to be a good environmentalist, you have to educate yourself, but it's also important that you leave the tree standing. So, you know, if you can read as much as possible on electronic devices, that's very important. Make sure those electronic devices, of course, are plugged into a renewable energy source. I think I'm doing well so far, okay. Okay. So we do have to keep up with the latest research. American Scientific Societies, good, yep. It's always important to talk to other people, especially if you don't know a lot like I do. You need to be, educating yourself as much as possible, reading, talking to people, and that kind of thing. I see the word nudging over there, which I really like. It is important to nudge people as an environmentalist because people are a little bit slow sometimes and you got to nudge them along, So you got to do that advocacy work and really try to get them moving on the issues. What is one of the issues? Okay, we're skipping some of the issues, but that's okay. Yeah, so this goes to that key point of talking to people. It's very important to make sure that we're doing that, talking to all the people that we can. Even if they're animated characters have a lot of sway, more sway than people realize. So make sure you talk to all your avatars as well and get them out there doing that environmental outreach work for you. And also that saves on trees. So year by year, you can see the amount of time that people are spending talking to animated characters. It is increasing towards the end there, only recently, right? Only recently have we started doing the work with animated characters that we need to do. So that's very important. I hope that work continues. And you can also track how much time we're spending talking to animated characters in trees, believe it or not. So, look at those tree rings, look for where animated characters started influencing the development of tree rings. And you can also notice in the historical record, in corals and in ice cores, and in other places, soil records even, where people have failed to talk to animated characters, but how that's more recently increasing. Okay, let's move on. Oh my, okay. So that looks like a hockey stick. A lot of graphs do these days. I don't know why, who knows? So it's, in all seriousness, we do see a lot of hockey stick graphs these days. Not all of them good, most of them not. But it is an animated hockey stick, so I think there's a connection that we can make there. And I'll leave that connection to you folks. Right, so I can't believe how I'm nailing this. Fern Gully, full of animated characters. People often don't think of the influence that the imagination and the arts can have on environmentalism. Avatar, there were some very serious issues with Avatar if we're looking at it from an intersectional perspective. Also, I haven't seen Fern Gully, but there are lots of trees in it. And I read the book when I was a little kid. I don't remember it very well. But also there's a picture of a mushroom. Anyone who wants to talk to me about mushroom foraging afterwards, I'm happy to do that. Be careful. Spoiler. Don't eat spoiled mushrooms. That's not good either. But yeah, so interacting with foraging, these guys, they're clearly foraging wild edibles. You need to educate yourself when you are foraging for wild edibles. Part of being a good environmentalist is interacting with nature, is interacting with animated characters, but please make sure that you consult the appropriate field guides. That's also very important. Okay, this is a bit of a stumper. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this one. I see that they're walking away from the tree, into the sky. Yes, try and walk into the sky. As a good environmentalist, it's good to think big, see the broader picture, and get up there, And, yeah, and while you're up there, remember to recycle. That is very critical, that we make sure that we're producing, sustainable materials. These swell bottles, who out there has a swell bottle? They're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. I recommend a swell bottle to everybody. They're swell. That's a monarch caterpillar over there, I know that. So that's on a milkweed leaf. When we're talking about protecting ecosystems in particular, making sure that there's a diverse array of species in that ecosystem. Part of being a good environmentalist is, knowing that you can water flowers with your swell bottle. And your swell bottle is very good at keeping that water an adequate temperature for the plant. Moving on. That's not being a good environmentalist. In this picture, I think I'm in Prague. I'm wearing my Community Canoe t-shirt. That's where we often plant some of these lovely things that are good for the birds, bees, and butterflies. But that is an odd, very swirly Czech sausage. So I would not recommend that from an environmental perspective or a gastronomical perspective. It was delicious, but I learned my lesson. So here we have a passive house. Passive houses are actually really interesting. We're going to be seeing them more and more over the next little while. Part of being a good environmentalist is advocating for sustainable housing systems. And not only that, you're doing what you can in your daily actions, but also pushing out there for systemic change, right? Because we all need to be thinking more along the lines of these passive housing models as more and more houses get torn down around the city. Hopefully, what we'll be seeing instead of these monster homes that are going up is more things like this. And I don't know if there's an anaerobic digester in there, Leigh, is there? Oh, good. Okay. Then we can move on. Breaking news. Breaking news. I'm still drawn to that picture of the tree. I think it's best most of the time to look at the tree, don't look at the breaking news. Often the breaking news is, not of any merit or importance, or, they don't look like they're going to talk about anything important, so I think I'm nailing that one too. Google and advertising, digital capitalism in the context of post-reportism. Okay. So being an environmentalist, and being a good environmentalist, also means getting a good dictionary. You will need to use it a lot. There's a lot of academic jargon out there. It's really important that we can speak in a language that is understandable to the general public. But it's also important that we do that work of getting our dictionaries out and trying to understand these scientific concepts so that we can communicate them effectively. Okay, that's the sun. I'm assuming that meant wear your sunscreen? That's also very important. That's a lovely picture of water. I think that might be a windmill thing happening there. It's very small. That water looks lovely. I wish I could go swimming. I have to find my bathing suit. It's somewhere packed away in the closet. But it's a lovely sunset, and we all want to be seeing many, many, many more of those. And one of the things that's really interesting, and people don't know this about Impressionist painters, is part of the reason why, how you see those foggy imagery, or that foggy imagery in Impressionism. Part of the reason for that was all the coal pollution and the emissions from that in the air, and the painters were painting with that in mind, right, in the heart of the Industrial Revolution. So Impressionism is actually pretty realistic, and we don't want to go back to that time. So, how to be a good environmentalist also means thanking the tree. Thank you, all of you. And I hope that you had a lovely time listening to me ramble on. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Leigh.
That was good. All right, so let's find out what I actually meant. All right, how to be a good environmentalist. I thought that I really laid it out pretty obviously step by step. 5-step program, pretty easy to remember all the steps. So, the first one, you did pretty well. You gotta know your stuff, right? You gotta do your research, know your stuff. That's really important. I couldn't help myself. I had to put in an image of probably the only US government-run website that's still allowed to say the words climate change. So that's from NASA. And yes, you gotta stay current. Part of being a scientist is making sure that you have the most up-to-date information and that you change your theories and your ideas as the research changes. So staying up to date is really important, making sure that we know what the most current studies are telling us about our climate, about the environment, really important. All right, yes, communication is obviously an excellent, a key trait of any good environmentalist. And we need to be able to talk about all of the research that is going on out there in a way that inspires people to act on it. So I thought this was pretty clear. This is obviously the famous hockey stick graph that was coined by Dr. Leigh back in the 90s. I even have a hockey stick to show you that it's the hockey stick graph. And so when this came out, it really was a turning point in the environmental movement because it went viral. It had a catchy nickname, a catchy phrase that people understood and liked. And we were able to very clearly see that the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere were rising quite quickly. And so this was a very effective tool in communicating one of the sources of climate change. And then, of course, having Hollywood on your side is also really key to any kind of environmental campaign. Who grew up as a Fern Gully lover? Yes, excellent. I'm actually shocked that my husband has never seen Fern Gully. I died a little bit when he said that out loud. We're gonna have to remedy that tonight. It's gonna be a long night. So yes, having Hollywood on your side, getting those environmental messages kind of out there, further than just our own environmental community is really, really key. Number 3, you gotta walk the walk. You gotta walk the walk, right? People hear you're an environmentalist and they like to put you in our little box. It's the, you're a vegan, tree-hugging, whistle-blowing hippie box. I've been put in it many times. It's not a bad place to be, but it's not always completely accurate. So, do you know one of the first things that David Suzuki said to his wife when they decided to start the David Suzuki Foundation? He turned to her and he said, "We gotta start taking the staples out of all our paper." She was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, people will be going through our recycling bin. They're gonna wanna make sure that we are following all of the environmental rules that we're telling everyone else to follow, and we've gotta do it meticulously." So you better believe all of their waste was meticulously sorted from then on, including removing all of the staples individually from any papers that were stapled together. So doing things like recycling, making sure that you're always carrying your reusable water bottle, to knowing what plants and species are out there. I remember one time my friend's sister asked Aidan, "So Aidan, what about the all of those bees that are dying? What's happening there?" I'm sitting there like, "Hi, I'm a biologist. You're not gonna ask me this question, you're asking my husband, the artist?" Although, to be fair, he talks a lot more about bees than I do, and he had an excellent answer for her. So, but they just kind of expect that we all know these things about a broad spectrum of environmental issues, even though, for the most part, most environmentalists kind of come at it from one way or another. My background is in conservation biology. People are always shocked to hear that I support subsistence hunting. Hunters were actually some of the first conservationists. They funded a lot of the work that got done in the 19th and 20th centuries in terms of protecting our natural areas. And so supporting those communities is actually really important, and making sure that we're doing it in a sustainable manner is far more important than protecting our agricultural industry, for instance. Industrial agriculture produces an obscene amount of greenhouse gases. And so, yeah, so just kind of balancing all of those things out and looking at all of the areas of gray in environmentalism and not just black and white is always really confusing and difficult to navigate. All right, and we don't always follow all of those rules that we set out for ourselves. So I'm definitely not vegan. I love cheese. And Aidan definitely likes eating lots of other animal products, like the beautiful schnitzel there in Prague. I think Aidan did a really good job of talking about this one, so I'll just make a plug. This is our dream home. If anyone has an extra one lying around, or if there's a wealthy donor in the house and they want to hook us up, we'd be very grateful. Thank you. Number 4. So, caveat to number 1, you got to know your stuff. You got to be able to keep current with all of the different trends and research that's going on, but you also have to know when to stick to your guns, right? You got to make sure that when news breaks, that you look at it objectively and you make sure that you're talking about the correct issues and making sure that you're addressing what's real and, of course, what's fake. Because we live in the era of fake news. And we live in an era where media and journalism insist on giving platforms to various voices, which is not necessarily a bad thing, except that we know that 98% of scientists know that climate change is happening because of humans. And yet, when we read a news article about climate change, it acts as if there's two sides to this coin and it's almost like a 50-50 rather than a 98-2. That's a very different ratio. And so looking at how do we combat fake news is a growing area of research. And I think we're going to learn a lot more about that in the coming years, which is, I think, super interesting. The last one is to stay positive. And I just really like making PowerPoint animations, so I thought that was fun. And yeah, so making sure that environmentalists are taking care of themselves as well as taking care of the earth and everyone else is really important. One of the things that we like to do as a couple is to get outside, get into nature. This photo was taken on our very first camping trip. Do you remember that? And it didn't exactly turn out great. As I recall, Lake Erie was full of E. coli and we couldn't go swimming. And then I contracted an infection and ended up in a merge. So that was good. But we still really like going outside and doing all those fun things. So we know that the science has actually told us that it decreases stress, it increases our attention span, we have better immune systems, despite the emerge. Anyway, it's all good. Good, I'm healthy now. And so yeah, those are my 5 steps to being a good environmentalist, the scientific way.